If you're like me and you already have all of the available fighters, it's time to check out some custom fighters. And today, Baba Yaga. Okay, it finally happened. I'm doing a public domain character, not a huge IP character. And I do need to quickly point out before we look at them, I did get her from the Meeplesmith, but she is absolutely huge. I mean, I don't know if you can already tell just from me holding her, but if I get another kind of scary character here, you can see just how massive this miniature is. Definitely not the right size for Unmatched. Bloody Mary's a little bit hard to tell, but if we grab Willow here, you can see that she is just way too big. I mean, when they are on the board together, she's way too big. So I did message the Meeplesmith here, and they did show me a couple of pictures here of the miniatures that they are planning to make. So whenever they do release those, I'll probably replace her with those smaller, more accurate for Unmatched ones. But for today, she works. But even when they're too big, the Meeplesmith always crushes with the details. This is just so detailed here. I love little dangling head here, and then the mushrooms growing on the tree there. There's another dangling head. The Meeplesmith just always crushes. So let's quickly look at the Baba Yaga hero card here, or the fighter card. So for Miss Baba Yaga here, she is a melee fighter with 11 health, and then she has a Sidekick The Hut, which is in melee, and 13 health. So her Sidekick actually has more health than her, and she has a move of 2. So let's quickly look at her special ability. It says fighters can move between the hut space and the entry spaces in the hut board. Let's pause there. So her sidekick is the hut, and we can quickly compare this to Willow's sidekick here, Tara. Said pretty accurate to the game until you turn them sideways. It's just a little bit too thick. But once again, on board, they look great. So this is the hut. And the hut is a very interesting piece here, because not only is it a sidekick that can attack and defend, but it's also a location. So whenever you start the game, you will actually put this little board off to the side, and this is the interior of the hut. Okay? So there's also these kind of gateway markers here. So if you are adjacent to the hut and you move onto his space, you will move onto one of those 2 spaces, and then when you want to move out of him, you pretend like this space is the space he's in, and move from here to the space next to him. So the second board here for the hut. So now that we kind of know what the hut board is, we can go back to the special ability. It says fighters can move between the hut space and the entry spaces in the hut board as if they were adjacent, kind of like how I was just saying. And at the end of your turn, deal 1 damage to every opposing fighter inside the hut and place them in spaces in the hut's zone. So basically at the end of your turn, if you can get anybody to go inside the hut, he spits them out and they deal 1 damage. We do have some special instructions here for the hut. So the hut board is made up of 4 spaces. We saw that. It's sharing a zone, 2 of which are entry spaces. We saw those. And the hut board is a part of the map. Opposing fighters can move through the hut sidekick. The hut sidekick can never occupy a space on the hut board, so he can't go inside himself. Makes sense. When the hut is defeated, place all fighters inside the hut board in spaces to the hut's zone and remove it from play. So yeah, pretty cool. So let's quickly pause before we look at the deck and everything and look at the health dials here for him. These ones are just gorgeous. We can quickly compare them to Bloody Mary here. Ooh, let's move her to 16. So a little bit smaller. But once again, when you're playing in your own deck, you can't even tell that it's not even from the game. I did real good at the window cutout here. And then we can also look at the hut here, which is just a kind of a wood base. Once again, the hut has more health than Baba Yaga. Looks great on both sides. If we look at a quick sidekick health dial, it's actually just a little bit bigger than that. And I just ended up keeping Baba Yaga and the hut the same size. So, not a big deal. Okay, now let's check out the deck here. So I quickly want to point out the card back here, because it's just gorgeous. It looks amazing. The creator, I believe he said that he used AI art generator to make all these, which I think is just crazy, because I feel like I've never seen AI art that looks this good. Usually there's always like some weird detail that just doesn't make sense. It looks handmade. So let's look at the deck here, first starting off with Baba Yaga's cards. This first one is an attack of 3 with a boost 2 and 2 copies. Iron Teeth. After combat, recover 1 health. If a Baba Yaga is inside the hut, recover 2 health instead. So yeah, so a lot of this deck is going to kind of go around the fact that she's going to be inside the hut board, and then kind of luring other people in there so she can do more damage. So a lot of times you want to kill the hut off like right away, and then she'll be a lot more vulnerable. That's kind of why the hut has more health than her, because it gets attacked way more often. So next here, 2 of those cards. We have the Devil's Grandmother, an attack of 4 for Baba Yaga, a boost of 3, 2 copies. During combat, if Baba Yaga is inside the hut, this card is a value of 6 instead. So once again, she wants to lure them in there. Quickly, let's look at the board here. This one here, the zone is not connected to the zone that he is in. So, yeah, let's keep looking at the deck here. So this one will turn into a 6, 2 copies of that, and that's the only 2 different attacks that Baba Yaga specifically has. Now for her specific defense cards, she has a defense of 0, boost of 2, 2 copies, Bewilderment, immediately prevent all damage. After combat, you may place Baba Yaga in any space. I believe another character has it, but I'm blanking on who has it. I guess like Genie or something. So that's her 2 defense cards. Now she has a defense of 3, boost of 1, 2 copies, Behave. After combat, deal 1 damage to the opposing fighter. If Baba Yaga is inside the hut, deal 2 damage instead. Once again, wanting to be inside the hut there. And then another Baba Yaga defense card of 1, boost 1, 2 copies. And this is Enhanced Awareness. Immediately, you may discard this card to play a different defense card from your hand. Once again, it could be the Bewilderment to prevent all damage, or to deal 1 damage to the opposing fighter. This is for immediately, so you would obviously also get to see what your opponent played. So the preventing all damage could be pretty nice. Now looking at her versatile cards here, this is a 2 versatile, 2 boost, 2 copies, Bony Leg. After combat, your opponent discards 1 card. If Baba Yaga is inside the hut, they discard a random card instead. Meaning that if they're outside the hut, they discard one that they want to choose. But if they're inside the hut, they discard a random card. So yeah, once again, she wants to be in that hut. Then a Baba Yaga versatile of 3, boost 2, 3 copies. And this is Pestilent Mortar, which I believe is what her her barrel and broom is called in like her mythos. And this is after combat, move Baba Yaga up to 3 spaces. She can move through opposing fighters and then draw 1 card. So another good card there. So now looking at Baba Yaga's scheme here, she has a boost of 1, 2 copies, Magical Compulsion. Move 2 opposing fighters up to 3 spaces each. If they end their movement inside the hut, their players discard 1 card. So this is kind of getting into the cards here that'll help you move your opposing fighters into the hut. Because usually you're not going to really want to go inside the hut and attack Baba Yaga, because you can just stand outside and just attack the hut from the outside. Once again, she can be standing in the doorway and attack from inside the hut to you. So another thing to kind of keep in mind there. But for ranged fighters, you can keep your distance from the hut and just keep attacking him until he dies, and then Baba Yaga will be very wounded, and then you can take her out. So yeah, she usually has 2 schemes specific to her. Now we can look at cards that are specific to the hut themselves. So he only really has 2 here, these versatiles and then these 2 schemes. But there's a couple Ennies in the deck we can look at in a second. So this is a 3 versatile for the hut, 3 boost, 3 copies. This is Chicken Legs. This is one of my favorite art in the deck. It's actually the art that I used for the chip itself. You can kind of see. So this is after combat, move the hut up to 4 spaces. It may move through opposing fighters, then deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter and move through. A very great card for when dealing with a lot of sidekicks, because you can move 4 spaces through 3 different sidekicks and then kill every single sidekick if they only have 1 health. So let's look at the hut here, another scheme card. This is 2 boost, 2 copies, and the Spinning Rampage, another great artwork. I almost use this for the chip, but it's a little bit harder to tell that it's a hut. This is deal 2 damage to each opposing fighter inside the hut, and then deal 1 damage to each opposing fighter adjacent to the hut. So great for getting a bunch of fighters inside the hut with that other card, and then if there's any adjacent around him, you just dish out the damage. Great card. So this is an Ennie, so this is one that both Baba Yaga and the hut can use together. This is an attack of 4, boost of 3, 2 copies, Abduction. After combat, place the opposing fighter in any space inside the hut and place Baba Yaga in an adjacent space. If you won the combat, gain 1 action. So this is a great card for decks that can move Baba Yaga, because you can kind of split up her and the hut and then keep your fighters in between so she can't get back into the hut. But this one, she can attack you, bring you into the hut, and go into the hut herself. So great card. Another versatile card here. This is a 4 with a 1 boost, 3 copies, of course an any that they could both use. This is Skirmish. After combat, if you won the combat, choose one of the fighters in the combat and move them to 2 spaces. You can move them into the hut. This is a card that other decks have, but this one specifically is really good for her because you can move those fighters and move them into the hut where you can do more damage to them. Then our last card here, Versatile 2 for any, boost of 1, 3 copies, and it's turn your back to the forest. After combat, move the opposing fighter up to 3 spaces, and they can move through opposing fighters. Draw 1 card. So another great card to move the opposing fighter around. So yeah, so let's look at my final thoughts. Alrighty, before we get into my final thoughts, I actually did want to kind of show what a match would look like here. So usually put the board off to the side. I usually do it like that, but for demonstrations, let's have it sideways here. So once again, these 2 doorways here are adjacent to the spaces that he is adjacent to. So as Baba Yaga, if you did her move 2, you go 1, 2, landing on his space, which would move you inside the hut there. So you got basically a maximum of 4 fighters inside the hut. And then once again, if you move him around, so you go 1, 2, move her into the hut, and then 1, 2, and that kind of moves her as well because she is inside that space. So yeah, just a really cool mechanic. I mean, I hope that Unmatched does something like this because that is just so cool. Okay, now we can talk about my final thoughts. So it's definitely been a long time coming to have a Creative Commons character, like a non-IP character. And Baba Yaga is just amazing. Obviously, it's a little bit harder to find miniatures for these kind of characters because usually miniature companies just want to make whatever's most popular. But I am glad to the Meeplesmith for at least making this one and then having a version 2 that works better with Unmatched. So I'm excited to get that. I did, while looking up the creator's name to make sure I had it right, he did make a couple of changes. Baba Yaga is now 12 health, and then there's also a few changes to the numbering for different attacks and defenses and stuff. So you can just, whenever you print your deck, you'll probably see the most recent one there. But yeah, overall, I do really enjoy playing as her. I think having this sideboard with the hut being a movable house is a very, very cool ability that we are not seeing in any other character. So definitely one of my favorites to print out. Is that it's such a fun deck that it is worth it to have a miniature that doesn't really fit with Unmatched just to play this whole style. So yeah, if you want to get this for yourself, Baba Yaga, this one specifically is available right now at the Meeplesmith, but they said soon they will have a version 2 available. So maybe I'll make a second follow-up video of showing the differences in the deck and the new miniature, but we'll see. And then the sidekick here is boardgamesmaker.com. It's just a little plastic token. I'll leave a link to that and the image that I used to print it off. And then same with the health dials here, also Board Games Maker. And then I will leave in the description the download link for the art so that you can print it off yourself. All you gotta do is just get these little punch outs and then cut out the window and then punch a hole through the middle so you can fit the Unmatched little clip things there. And then the board here is also Board Games Maker. Basically everything I have printed besides the miniature is going to be Board Games Maker. And then this artwork here is from the creator. He did end up making this. I believe it's a kind of an RPG background, and then he just made the spaces there. The only thing I ended up doing was resizing it so it fits on a board this size. And I wanted to specifically make sure that it folded up so it's the same size as the cards. So it's super easy to store in a deck box. And then the cards here, also Board Games Makers, where I got them printed. I'll leave a link for the exact one there. But the card back and the art and the design and everything is going to be at unmatched.cards. Here's our creator, Aidan or Aidan. Either way, fantastic deck. Hope to see a lot more from him because this one's just so creative and fun. Anyways, I got to go. My toast is burning.